Can I ask a question, if it's all right? So when you say DIY HRT, it sounds to me like you're saying medications that are normally prescribed for HRT, but you know, if for whatever reason you're acquiring these same medications outside of that route. Because I was wondering, is that the only form of DIY HRT, or are there other forms? And the reason I ask is because
that's a great question.
The reason I ask is because I've personally looked into. I'm not trans. I don't think I'm trans, but I've looked into hormones for my own
source
thing. So, yeah, I've looked into hormones for you know, for being just having hormone stuff. And I've talked about this a lot with my own community. I don't want to go into it too much here, but basically, yeah. So I've looked into it, and I've looked up a lot of papers, and I've seen that like there's herbal teas, or there's types of like things like that have historically been used in many like communities to try to deal with hormonal things. And I don't know if that has any role in DIY HRT as well, or if it's just the prescription or the just meds that are normally prescribed.
Bad Bunny, I love you so much. Thank you for this question. This is wonderful. So that is exactly what I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
DIYing is broadly, when a trans person says DIYing, they are almost always going to be talking about buying through a gray market website. Gray market as opposed to black market, because in a black market website, you and the person you're dealing with and the thing that's going on, all super definitely illegal. Gray market, so, you know, it would be black market if you went online and bought LSD. LSD is illegal. The person selling it to you is doing a crime. You're doing a crime. All crime all the time.
Oh yeah.
Gray market, right?
Tim!
It is.
Tim, I can't believe it again.
No, we do not endorse this opinion here at Red
in a
Planet.
gray market site, it might be no, LSD whips.
I was going to say, do you think that DIYing is less fun because it's less illegal than acid?
So gray market, like it's about the supply, right? So like it might be a controlled substance. Testosterone, for example, is a higher level controlled substance than estrogen, but like all prescription medications are controlled substances.
That was one of the arguments they made when we were watching the live stream in court. Like they're like, testosterone is a controlled substance, so we shouldn't give it to kids.
Yeah, fucking
but
transphobes love that
pretty
shit.
easy to I've heard of people go get testosterone very easily for like, just like cis men to go get testosterone.
Yeah, cis men get testosterone for other things, right? For like,
shall I blow your cis minds for a second?
Please.
They don't no one gives testosterone to kids because when you're, because it's puberty blockers is what they give to trans teens, right? Like it's not even it's a nonsense argument on top of everything else.
This seems to be the trend I've noticed. Is like when you look into it, they're just those things say things like sex change. It's like that's not a thing. Like they're just like
it's the turf line, isn't it? The turf line is like, we don't want to give kids these irreversible, surgeries, and it's like no one is doing that. No one is doing that.
Yeah. So it's like the medication, the puberty blockers are the reversible. They stop the irreversible.
As soon as you come off puberty blockers, you start going through puberty. There's an argument we could go like, how about we just give these to anyone that wants them? Regardless, even if they're cis, they might be like, oh, I don't know if frankly, that would be my position. Honestly, I think that we should just informed consent. Anyone who wants anything gets it. Fine.
100%.
Honestly, that is my position.
I personally, I think puberty blockers are bad. Actually, hear me out. It's not natural to actually like postpone puberty like that. They should just give them the hormones that they want. Like I know people who've been on hormone blockers and then they end up having like bone density issues later in their life.
I do think that's a completely valid argument. Honestly, I wouldn't say it as hardline and as certainly as you have, but like I more or less feel the same way. I
think it's like puberty blockers can be a way for people to kind of navigate the existing shitty kind of structures that it is, right? Like so they can be like
kind of
I think for the most part it's more about appeasing the parents than it is about the children.
It does feel like that, to be fair.
But anyway, so
when trans people say DIYing, they're usually referring to they've obtained through some kind of source HRT, and they're taking it without a prescription. The thing is, that isn't always gray market sites. I wanted to point this out. I think this is really important to consider. Trans people share their medication all the time, just constantly, and not just exactly the same medication, but like often people will just be like, hey, do you want to try out like doing an estrogen shot instead of taking pills? Like, do you want to just see how that feels? And then if you like it, you could ask your doctor to change you over, because like you don't necessarily want to go through the whole hassle of having a doctor's appointment in order to try something, and then you have to change back again. Like,
I mean, I know people that have done this for other medications as well, you know, like dealing with like ADHD or whatever like that, being like, oh, you take this one, we'll try this one and see how that, like, I think it's
exactly. And that's
it's a thing that happens
consent,
all the time,
baby.
right?
It's fucking great. But to answer the original question from Nicole, like, it's actually herbal HRT does figure into it. So I'm not a medical professional, and we're not offering medical advice here on the show. And because of that, I'm not going to get into the specific of it. However, herbal HRT is a thing. Like, people kind of brush it off as not being a thing. I think it sounds a little bit hippie-ish or whatever. But for example, wild yams is a thing. Is a source, I think, of either progesterone or estrogen. I think it's estrogen, but I'm not certain. Again, I'm saying I don't know this stuff. Don't take my word for this. And also, there are hundreds of species of wild yams, and most of them are poisonous. Don't take my word on any of this shit. I'm saying as a kind of almost hypothetical example, right? But like Nicole, what you were talking about before, like I think was in reference to the blocking of testosterone. And yeah, there are foods and herbs and tinctures that can be made that like do block people's testosterone in various ways. And they've been practiced for thousands of years. It's kind of a meme in the trans femme community to talk about straining horse piss, because the ancient Greeks, the Scythians, would strain horse piss to get estrogen out.
I am Greek for the record, so maybe this is
I
thought that was
I always thought you were just doing it for fun, like.
But
oh no.
That's where the Hugh cow stuff comes from.
Wait. I thought that was actually what the drug Premarin was. I thought that was actually made from horse urine.
Mares.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the piss of mares, I right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Premarin, that's right. It's a thing that's maintained up until the replacement of Premarin by estradiol. But no, we don't just have to strain horse piss. It's kind of funny. It's like you'll get this with certain like anti-civ or like anprim trans femmes who are like, yeah, fuck it, societal collapse, it doesn't matter, I'll just strain horse piss. And I'm like, okay, you can strain the horse piss, you do that, that's fine. I'm not gonna I'm not advocating for this situation where we're straining horse piss. But I will say I did check with someone who is more knowledgeable, like way more knowledgeable than me about herbal HRTs, who I know, and they said, and I think this is actually pretty important information to relay, they don't know of anyone who is taking just herbal HRTs. They only know of people who use it to supplement their existing prescribed course of treatment. So I think that is really worth knowing.
But I did see someone
post.
I know of people who take just it, but like they said that they don't, and they are someone who's kind of way more in that community. So I'd say,
I saw someone had posted in here in the chat a minute back that they were so they were DIYing, but for some things, but they were also getting they were going to the doctor. They had a prescription for one thing, but then they were also DIYing on the side for something that wasn't readily available to them, and that their doctor was able to kind of guide them in the use of that, which is like pretty basic.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I can talk through a hypothetical of that and actually connect that up to some stuff that I want to talk about anyway, which is which is that in the UK, despite international guidance, progesterone is not prescribed. Which, like, progesterone is a pretty normal part of HRT regimen, according to most doctors around the world who know about it. And in the UK, for fucking no reason, the UK doctors are like we aren't sure if it's safe to do it. And it's like, well, all these other fucking countries have done it, and it's great, and it gives you great big fucking huge mommy milkers and makes you horny as hell. So it's a good drug. Let's fucking get it going.
Fuck yeah.
That sounds pretty based.
I always felt confused about it. Like I never was on it.
Yeah.
Well, I was, but I didn't notice any difference.
Right.
Feels like a lot of this is like such so mysterious sometimes, honestly.
Well, I mean, effects vary hugely, definitely.
It's almost like there needs to be way more research done into this stuff, and there's not enough. Crazy.
Not to mention that,
it's like we're far enough in research to say that like a lot of the risks that transphobes fearmonger about are nonsense, but we also need loads more research to help people do it right and do it well.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Also, this is it's somewhat similar to the experience that like I've had and many other cis women have had on birth control. Like, like there's lots of different forms of birth control, and for whatever reason, sometimes your body will like freak the fuck out on some, but others will be perfectly fine. And it's like you can argue that there's like much more research that needs to be done because there is a lot of neglect of like reproductive systems for like I never knew should you say female reproductive systems? We had this whole conversation the other day. It feels weird to say female because it sounds like but like uterus.
You could just say like, wombs and uterus.
You just say
okay. There is still a huge like lack of concern for the side effects that people with wombs have, I suppose. But regardless, I think that this is something that has never like seemed to be that big of an issue. At least I don't see any huge won't someone think of the whoever with regards to birth control, even though there are many like adverse side effects of many types of birth control. It does seem like it's primarily this concern and this lack of research tends to be something that transphobes seem to be really concerned about with regards to trans people. But I just wanted to point out that is a thing that it's very like mysterious, like you said. It's like I don't know. It's like kind of similar to dermatology, where someone uses a lotion, it's fine. The other one they break out immensely. It's like it's kind of like a black box type thing. So.
Yeah. So I wanted to say about that someone who's a prescription for one thing and the doctor's guiding them for something else. Supposing it's progesterone in the UK, right? Because this is an example that like I'll probably have to be fucking navigating soon, because I wanted to per a lot of guidelines about how this is generally done. Like I want to not be on progesterone until a certain point, which is about 2 years after I've been on estrogen, which is coming up. So I'm going to be badgering my doctor a lot soon. Anyway, I know that a lot of people go DIYing as a route to get prescriptions, and this is a really interesting thing that people who try to warn against DIYing, and this is one of the reasons to again shame and deride Muel's friend. Another reason why like it's so dangerous or whatever is such a silly idea is because actually a lot of people start taking DIY HRT so that they can go to their doctor and say, I'm taking this and I'm going to take this whether you give me a prescription or not. So if you want to know that it's definitely the thing that I want it to be, and you want to be able to get me blood tests, then you better write me a prescription. And then the doctors do. And
that
like,
works.
a whole bunch of, well, that's the problem, because you're banking on your doctor making the sensible, right, healthy decision for their patient, which is their job.
Right. But you undermine their authority immensely.
Right.
You ever told a doctor to wash their hands because they fail to do so, and watch them like
they have
a sign that says "Remind me to wash my hands," and I will say it. And they're like, they like want this appointment to end. Imagine being like arm like twisting their arm into like forcing them to like write them a prescription. Oh gosh.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So I have a friend who actually used to live in famous TERF Rosie Duffield's constituency, and my friend was doing this route, was on DIY, and then went to their doctor, and the doctor was just like, no, like I won't write you the bridging prescription, which to me is just medical malpractice. Like if someone says I'm taking this and I will keep taking this, and you could make me do it in a healthier way, and you're like, no, I think that's just vile. But like I say, it is a gamble, but it's also worth knowing that, yeah, people are doing this all the time as a path to get it. And actually, when I went for my referral, when I went to see the private specialist so I could get my referral for prescriptions, like they said one of the kind of changes that they've had recently in making it more liberal and more accessible as opposed to how it used to be is that if someone's taking hormones, they take that as a pretty good sign that they're probably trans, which I would agree with, honestly. I think that's probably true.
Well, I think that's the main response to, my friend that said, oh my God, don't take hormones DIY. That it's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
I feel like it's incredibly far more dangerous to not do hormones when you know you're trans. Like,
well, that's absolutely true. And that leads to an anecdote that I want to tell about myself. So I have hinted this already in discussing this, but this topic is personal to me because I was DIYing before I got a prescription. And that's a huge part of why I want to talk about this, because I know that other people don't, even though I know some people who have and they totally could, but they don't. And so I think it's really important to talk about it because for various reasons, and we've already discussed some of them. But what I did was I started off actually accessing a testosterone blocker completely legally. If you are an AMAB person who is looking for hormone therapy and you want at least half of it, you can get a testosterone blocker completely legally, because the testosterone blockers that they prescribe to trans women to stop your T going places is the exact same medication that they give to cis men to stop balding. So without even getting an appointment with my doctor, I went to an online pharmacy in the UK and I just ordered finasteride. And they were completely happy to give it to me. There was a little box for like, why do you want this? And I was like, I want to treat my receding hairline. And they were like, great, have as much as you like. And the thing
that's valid, very valid.
The thing is, I kept on doing this for about 6 months, and then I finally took the plunge and went to a gray market website. I won't be naming it. We will be discussing people who give out advice for doing things safely later in the show. But I went to a gray market. I also want to say this: we won't be naming any specific sites today because they get shut down all the time. So even if you were coming here looking for advice, and again, we're not giving advice, we're not medical practitioners.
Oh yeah.
If you came and looked at this VOD in a year, the site's probably not there. But eventually I went to a site and I found that I could get estrogen. And so I ordered estrogen and it showed up in the mail. The process for this, if people are wondering, is that you make it like a bank transfer to a specific account rather than like through a sort of storefront, generally speaking. And then like it just shows up. And it seems very risky, like, they could just take your money and do nothing, but you have to consider that like if they give you your medication, they can keep taking your money. They can keep taking your money forever rather than if they just do it once.
Is it expensive?
I found
by the
that
way?
I could. We'll get into that.
Okay.
So I found that I could get estrogen, and I found that on the same site they were selling finasteride. And so I thought, okay, there's that little box on the website for the online pharmacy where I'm getting it legally that asks me why I want it. I've been telling them I'm a cis man, but if I tell them I'm a trans woman, like, it's the tiniest possible possibility, but it's non-zero because people do write bridging prescriptions. They might go, well, okay, we want you to do this healthily and safely. We'll give you estrogen and finasteride. So I ordered finasteride from this online pharmacy, and I which I'd been ordering for 6 months already. And for the first time, I put in the box of why you want it. I'm a trans woman and I want hormone replacement therapy. And they said, trans medicine is really complicated and we shouldn't be prescribing it to you without a specialist. And
wow.
I'm like, you've been prescribing it to me this whole time, you slimy little rat fucks.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And this leads me to a concept I want to talk about, which is the transgender broken arm. I've seen this idea replicated for people of color and fat people. So you have the black broken arm, the fat broken arm, but here I'll stick to trans people. A cis person walks into the emergency room with a broken arm. The doctor will ask them how much pain they're in, what happened, can you move it like this, can you make a fist, is there swelling, and so on. But if a trans person walks into ER with a broken arm, what they'll get asked is, what medications are you taking? How long have you been on HRT? Sometimes they get asked whether they have surgeries or whether they intend to, who prescribes their HRT, how they got their referral, and so many other like bullshit irrelevant questions. What were you gonna say, Keffals?
I actually have an experience that happened to my friend, which I think really illustrates that point. So she had bottom surgery. This was years ago. She had bottom surgery, and she came back home. She has hemophilia, so like her blood cells, they don't clot very well, and she started bleeding from her vagina like post the surgery. She goes to the emergency room. The doctor says, I don't feel like I have enough experience in order to treat you, and sends her home. It gets worse. She almost bleeds to death, and she has to call an ambulance and have emergency surgery.
That's so fucked.
So it's like they obviously knew how to treat it. They could, but no, it's like she's
I feel like most doctors know what hemophilia is.
This is exactly what I was going to go on to in the second paragraph about the transgender broken arm. So like the broken arm example is you just experience a delay before you get your broken arm treated. But I know from over half my trans friends that talking to a doctor about just about any unexplained symptoms can result in the doctor questioning whether HRT is the thing causing the problem, with the implication or sometimes even explicit suggestion that they should try going off HRT to see if that fixes the problem before they try anything else at all. So that's exactly your anecdote, Keffals, is exactly the kind of thing. Actually, my healthcare is managed through an app, and the app keeps on spitting out appointments to check whether my prescriptions are still right for me. Which whenever I make the appointment and I talk to doctors and I'm like, why is it making me make this appointment? They're all baffled. Like all the doctors who I actually see do not understand why this is happening, but the system keeps on making me make these appointments.
Can I just say that as a person who's worked adjacent to the medical industry as an epidemiologist, like being fully honest with your doctor is an imperative part of like the medical process. And what is happening right now is doctors are making it impossible for trans people to be honest with their doctors, which will lead to in a roundabout way, in other ways, like what like Keffal was alluding to. You can see already like the issues, the conflict of trans plus medical. Like imagine how much further it can go when a trans person can't be fully honest with their doctor, and it leads to something else, like, you know, some sort of thing that they don't detect soon, or some sort of like bad treatment. This is like extremely concerning. And wow.
Well, that's the institutional aspect of it, right? Because, you know, in all these institutions everywhere, like the main institution that trans people need in order to get their healthcare is the healthcare system, and having transphobia be at the heart of that, that's what makes it undeniable that transphobia is an institutionalized problem all over, like pretty much all over the world. I don't think there's one country that doesn't have this issue. I might be wrong, but yeah, and it's so telling, isn't it? Because it's just like someone in the chat was saying just then, they're not even teaching medical students about trans healthcare, you know? So how the hell can, you know, we expect these medical institutions to actively be learning about this stuff? It's like, you know, within the constraints of capitalism that we have right now, in the way that doctors are sort of forced to practice, where, you know, like they'll be saying to themselves, what benefit is there to me and to my practice to learn about trans healthcare other than like upholding my fucking Hippocratic oath or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so I think we'll be getting into a little bit of the differences. Like, I think that's a statement that's like basically stays true, but like it's going to be interesting as we look at differences across the world. So
just gonna be back in a second, by the way.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm just checking over my notes.
Yeah, Velvet makes a good point. Velvet in the chat says relates to probably a future point, but a lot of trans people know more about HRT than the fucking docs that they go to. It just sounds like it.
This is more foreshadowing. Yeah, this is definitely more foreshadowing of the later in the episode. So I already said this, but if you're DIYing, like, you should be as rigorous as possible about getting regular blood tests and checking your levels and making sure that everything's okay. But like, again, I've got prescribed estrogen now, and I'm just like behind on my blood tests, and it's honestly like not worse. I'm not running more of a risk now than I was when I was DIYing, because it's not like more time since my last blood test than or rather, no, sorry, it's more time. I've said this the wrong way around. It's more time since my last blood test with a prescription than the whole time I DIY'd for. So it's literally like I was running less of a risk by DIYing there than I am right now by just being fucking lazy and a messy bitch. Yeah.
And as you will soon find out, you cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot see.